What's up, Internet? You're tuning in to episode 54 of the Steam Deck Podcast, Slipscreen Games weekly podcast all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Steve. Welcome back to another jam-packed week.
Big one. Yeah, I mean, we're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff. Some related to Steam Deck, some seemingly not, but people want to hear us talk about it, so it's all good. We'll talk about
it. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the craziest thing is we've got another chock full question, or no, sorry, not question block, not the question block.
Steam docket.
The Steam docket is full this week, is what I'll say. And I got to tell you, I don't know if we're gonna get to it all because we got a lot to talk about. And I wanna kick things off with a personal story that you've got brought to the table because I saw you posting about it a little bit in the Discord. And I want to hear about your adventures changing the fan on your Steam Deck.
Yeah, does anyone want to buy a Delta fan? I've got one left now, and it's going spare. If someone wants to experience the noisy fan, I've got one. Yeah, it was pretty easy. I finally got sick and tired of that annoying whistle, which you've never experienced, Pete, which you're very fortunate to have never experienced. Horrible.
Not lucky, but I'm
and
fortunate.
So I bought a kit from iFixit, easy peasy. Came along. It was like 25 quid, I think. So not too expensive, but still quite pricey for a fan, for a tiny little component. 25 quid's, it's not chump change. And
it's also not too bad
easy to install
for a quality of life upgrade like that, though. Like if the noise was bothering you all the time.
And it is a very big quality of life upgrade. It's so much nicer.
Good.
I'm very happy. The curious thing is on iFix's website, they're calling like these parts for the early version of the Steam Deck now. Because they're doing a total revision. We spoke about, it was a few months back though, they started coming out into the wild. And these fans don't fit them anymore. They use a different designed fan and they don't have parts for it yet. So you can only buy the Huaying fans from them, which fit the early versions of the Steam Deck that we've both got. And it was so easy to install. I ignored all of the iFixit guide and I was I'm not taking off all of that stuff to undo the battery and all of that. I could not be bothered. So I just opened it up, unscrewed this, pulled it out, put the new one in. It was done in like 10 minutes at most. And while I was there, I was like, if only I had another SSD that I could slot in here. And if only I had some Hall effect sticks that I could put in here. If only I had one of those cool
You're so close to teetering over that edge, dude. You're gonna become one of those guys.
I am so close. Yeah, I know. Like, oh god, you want to see through back on your Steam Deck.
I do.
You do.
I really do. You're like a medium blow of wind away from getting just thrown off that cliff, though, and becoming like the crazy person who opens this thing and spends 4 hours putting a new case on it and everything.
Yeah, next week I'll be talking about how I have delidded the CPU or I've redone the thermal paste on there. I'll be going to that extreme. No, I won't be.
You're I feel like you're not long for not being one of those guys. We'll see what happens. But I am interested about this one for folks who maybe were early adopters, or if God forbid, if some of the folks that have newer ones, if they do start to make noise down the line or something like that. It sounds like you thought this was pretty easy. Like, do you think this is something that like the layman could figure out?
Yeah, very easy. iFix's guides are pretty good. And it's your risk. I'd read the guide, have a read through the risks that are involved if you don't discharge the battery and unplug it. I was pretty confident that I wasn't gonna hit a contact point on the board and short it out. I was pretty happy to just go in there and pull it out, but it's not best practice. But I think anyone could do this. I think it's really simple. It's 8 screws to take the back off. You go around it with the like guitar pick things. Like they give you in the kit. You get the screwdriver with the bits that you need. You get a pair of tweezers, and you get a bunch of the. Yeah, and you get a bunch of the little guitar picks. Like, give me like 6 of them. It's like, how many of these do you think I need? I'm not gonna be breaking these. Like,
You might be
I
losing
guess I
them
could
though.
learn to play guitar now, you know?
That was what was
Um,
standing in your
but
way was having a guitar pick.
yeah, I just never had any guitar picks. So and now I can finally learn to play. No, but it was so easy. It's probably one of the easiest installs. I mean, changing the back plate's the easiest thing. It's literally unscrew it and put a different one on. I feel like you should probably just get a back plate and replace it if you
It's
want one. It's
yeah,
so easy, Pete.
alright, maybe I'll just do it then.
Yeah, like you opened up your Joy Cons and replaced the sticks, right? You did that.
I bought the kit to do it and then never did it, but yes.
No, you are joking me. You
Oh,
did not replace the sticks yet.
no, I've been so busy. I just bought it and was like, "Awesome, I'm ready to do it," and then just, never did.
Okay,
Got it right
well,
here though.
it's simpler than that. So maybe
Cool.
start with the back plate and then work your way up to the sticks.
Okay. Did you record yourself doing this at all?
No, it's so simple. You doesn't. Honestly, there's better people who have recorded it than me. Go watch iFixit. They're the people that sell you the kit. But this is the easiest thing in the world. It's literally one plug, and the fan's only held in with 2 screws at the bottom,
Nice.
and there's like a sticker that goes over the top. You got to make sure that the sticker goes back on it. But it's so simple. Um, and you only really need to do this if you've got a noisy fan. And even then, the like Q4 of 2022, like last quarter of last year, they started putting foam on the back plate to kind of push down on the fan to stop it squealing. That was their solution. But now there's been like the total revision with the redesigned fan and stuff. So this won't be a problem going forwards. But very glad to be rid of that fan because it was making noise while I was trying to play Baldur's Gate.
Well, there you go. I mean, I know we have a lot of early adopters in the audience, so if there is anybody who is going to try it for themselves, definitely report back and let us know how it goes. But sounds like it's a pretty easy fix. So you've inspired me.
Yeah, now I've got a
Think I'll do
corny
the back
like
plate.
fidget toy. So it's like it's great, you know.
It's a piece of history in your hands, Steve. You gotta get that thing plated.
Yeah, maybe. This is the thing that made my ears hurt for over a year. I don't know why I didn't do it sooner. I think it was the price that put me off, and then also oh no, what if I break it? But I'm out of warranty now on it, so I was just like,
Yeah,
if I
whatever.
break it, I'm gonna have to pay to repair it anyway. So why don't I just do it at this point?
Nice. Well, I'm glad it was an easy fix.
Yeah, yeah, really easy.
So the next thing we've got on the list here is you've I want to introduce it the way that you've written it here, Steve. Is FSR3 going to change the game? Answer this for me, Steve. Is it going to change the game, or is it a lot of smoke and mirrors?
Somewhat, I think so. Yes, I mean this is
Somewhat.
from
You can't just somewhat
Gamescom.
change the game. Come on.
Look, I mean, it's not going to make Forspoken a good game. It might make Forspoken 100, run at 175 frames per second, but you still won't want to play it. So, somewhat it will change the game. You just might not want to play that game that is changed. So, this was news that came out of Gamescom. AMD had a bit of a presentation there, and they walked through some of the stuff from FSR3. They'd already announced a lot of this stuff alongside their 7900 card. But we've got some more information on it, and we now know that it's imminent. So it's coming sometime in September to the first 2 games. We're going to see it in Forspoken and Immortals of Avium when that launches in September, with more games to come by the end of the year. They're saying that Avatar Frontiers of Pandora is going to launch with it. Cyberpunk 2077 is going to get an update. Space Marine 2, Frostpunk 2, The Alter Squad, Starship Troopers Extermination, Black Myth, Wukong, Crimson Desert, and Like a Dragon Infinite are all going to get FSR 3. Do you know anything about FSR, Pete? Are you familiar with it at all?
I feel like I didn't think I was, but looking at the screenshot that you've included down here, it's ringing a bell for me now. So it's I tell me if I'm wrong. It has to do with boosting FPS, right?
So yes and no. So the way it's kind of AMD's answer to DLSS, to NVIDIA's DLSS.
Okay, okay.
But it's like it's like a free open source version that anyone can include in their games. So we've got FSR2 in games now. Um, um, Things like Baldur's Gate 3 are using FSR. I think it's launched with FSR1. It had an update when it went 1.0 to FSR2. But there's also FSR built into the quick access menu as one of the scaling options. And the way
Okay.
it works is it basically takes the game, it renders it at a lower resolution, and then upscales it to look like a higher resolution. So rather than running the
Got it.
game at native 800p on the Steam Deck screen, it might run it at half that resolution, 400p, and then scale it up to look like 800p using a kind of anti-aliasing technology, similar to TAA, temporal anti-aliasing, but it's kind of their own take on it. And it will look at like frames and like use AI to kind of match it and make it look good. And so you've probably been using FSR in games. I think it's turned on in Baldur's Gate by default and not realized it. But FSR3 adds in some additional things. So we get the super resolution stuff, which is what we've been used to in FSR1 and FSR2. But they're adding something called Fluid Motion Frames and Anti-Lag Plus. Fluid Motion Frames is like DLSS 3's frame generation. It will
Okay.
make frames up and insert them. So it will estimate what it's going to look like between frames and insert them into the image. It really only works. AMD says that it works when it's best used when running at a minimum of 60 FPS for optimal and low latency experience. But we'll talk about whether that rules it out for deck in a little bit. But because of this, because of the new fluid motion frames, in combination with the super resolution upscaling, they're saying that they can get you 3.3 times more FPS in Forspoken on ultra high settings, plus ray tracing running at 4K on their AMD Radeon RX 7900 XTX card. So that's a jump from 53 frames per second all the way up to 175 frames per second. So you
Yeah.
can see why this would be very useful and
Yeah.
advantageous for the
Absolutely.
Steam Deck, for example. Like if we can run a game at say 30 FPS or we can get to 40 FPS, can this get us up to 60 FPS? Would this be something that you'd be interested in? I presumably it is. I think everyone would want it, right?
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like an ideal solution, right? Because it's like giving you it kinda I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, it kinda reminds me of, like, the way that upscaling used to work back on, like, the Xbox 360, right? Where it's like it did the base 720 and then it would, like, upscale to 1080, right? And, like, you could get that higher perform like, what feels like that higher performance, whether or not it's, you could do the Digital Foundry type breakdown and be like, "Well, it's not quite, the same," but, like, I mean, the difference between 40 FPS and, like, something that feels like 60 FPS is probably still a pretty big difference. So, like, I could see that being really, really attractive, specifically on deck. But I mean, obviously, on any PC, it's exciting to think that you could get, um, a little more than 3 times a performance increase out of
Yeah.
a high, like a taxing game that, like, makes such a wider range of PC budgets, top like high end then, you know what I mean? Like, you could get a more mid-level
Yeah,
investment PC
100%. Like
and
you don't have to you could look and say, "Well, I wanna play this specific game, and now I know that FSR3 is coming to that game. I don't need to buy as beefy a
yeah,
GPU to hit the 60 FPS that I want or the
yeah,
120 FPS that I want." I think why it's really exciting for the Steam Deck is just because there's so many games that can't hit 60 FPS. Now, it's possible that the fluid motion frame, sorry, just won't work. You know, AMD has said that it's best used running at a minimum of FPS for optimal and low latency experience. That could mean that it just won't run, but I kind of feel like if you're getting close to 60, if you're in that like 50 range, I feel like if you can just, generate some frames to smooth things out, I feel like it's probably going to be a decent experience, and I'd be interested to try it out and see how it works when Forspoken comes out.
them saying that, like, it the best experience is at 60 makes me think that it will accommodate lower than that, even if it's not
Yeah, I mean, look at the
optimal.
example they've given us, right? It's
Yeah, it's
running at
running at
53
53.
frames per second.
That's sub 60, right? So, like,
Yeah.
is 40 that much lower? Is 45 that much lower? Like, like, if you can figure out that sweet spot, that'd be really cool. I guess my question for you, Steve, is, on the technical side of things, how does something like this impact, say, like, battery life? Like, is taking advantage of this something that gives you that upscaled quality without drawing a ton more power? And is that part of the advantage? Or is it something that is gonna, you know, yeah, maybe you're getting a way higher quality than you could before, but you're gonna pay for it. You're gonna need to be plugged in. You're gonna need to be docked.
I think you're gonna be needing to run these games at high the kind of games that would benefit from this. You're gonna be getting minimal battery life out of it anyway, 'cause it's gonna be running maxed out 15-watt TDP. And this is just gonna make the experience nicer. So where you were maybe getting 53 frames per second, for example, maybe you can get up to 60 frames per second, which is the limit on the Steam Deck. 'Cause obviously, the display is a 60 FPS display, but if you plug it into an external display, maybe you can get up to something like 120 in some games that support it.
I
At the
think that
moment,
would.
it's a game by game basis, but they are saying that they're working on a driver level version for
Oh,
DirectX 11 and DirectX
that would be
12
so
coming in the
cool.
future, which is similar to how the FSR scaling in SteamOS works at the moment. You can turn that on and scale the sharpness level. And I wonder if this is something that Valve could bake in at the SteamOS level or the Proton level, where can they activate this these like frame generation, the fluid motion frames technology? Can they activate at the Proton level? And if so, is this maybe the reason that 3.5's been delayed for so long? We know it's been worked on for so long. Is it finally going to come out in um, you know September when FSR 3 drops?
Hmm. That is that is really interesting. That would be very cool, and I think, um, it could tie to a feature that we've
And that I
been.
think would change the game.
Yeah,
Like that I
yeah,
think is the thing that changed the
it
game.
would. That would be really cool. And I think if you could couple that with another feature that we've requested in the past, which is, like, the ability to have, some kind of way for the Steam Deck to toggle between, "Hey, I'm docked and, displaying out to another screen," versus, I'm running something natively, and you could, like, save presets like that. That would be awesome. Because if you could have the experience of, like, okay, like, I have, like, for Baldur's Gate right now, right? Like, I have a preset that I'm using of, like, this is how I've gotten the best performance I can get without compromising on the battery too much, right? And if I could plug it into the dock and then be like, all right, sweet, like, let me take advantage of this, and I'm gonna output it 60, FPS, and, like, something that feels like 4K. That would be great, because then I wouldn't be like, oh, like, I'm gonna buy the PlayStation version at launch because I want to play it on the TV sometimes, and, like, there have been times, right? The other night I was playing, like, Sarah had gone up to bed, and I'm, like, sitting on my couch playing on the deck, and I'm like, this is great, but I would like to sit on the and use the television that's sitting turned off a couple feet away from me, right? But it's not worth it if
Mhm.
it's running at 720, 30 FPS. It's like, why? I'm gonna
I've been
well,
running it at 900 at 40 FPS Baldur's Gate, and it's an okay experience, but you're right, it would be great if I could or even sacrifice a bit of that resolution, like run it at 800p in native, but because I've got the frame generation that I can turn up the shadows, I can turn up the textures, I can
yeah.
kind of things that would sacrifice the frame rate usually, I can maybe use some of these flourishes and embellishments to make the game look nicer, but still run at the same level of performance I've come to expect.
Yeah, and even if it's not like true, 4K 60 FPS, like, the closer you can get to that, the better, right? The more that the Steam Deck is giving you that modular experience that I think we want out of it, that is currently a little bit lacking. Like, yeah, like, the dock is a good product, and, like, it's, you can get good enough performance out of it. But if you are somebody who has like, like you do, right? Like, and I do, right? Like a nice 4K OLED TV in your home, theater setup, right? And you want to take advantage of that, and you are used to the quality of experience you're getting on your PC or on your modern console. It would be cool if the Steam Deck could even flirt with that a little bit, and this seems like something that could really, at least for some games, push it over and be like, yeah, I mean, close enough, right?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I am. Like, I just want it to look as good, but I want it to feel great too. And anything I can do to get a little bit more of it, then great. There's one other thing, right? Apart from the anti-lag, which is similar to, I can't remember what they call it. It's like hyper something on Nvidia's side that only works with their 40 series cards. Um, that basically makes the controls feel more responsive. I don't really think that's relevant unless you're running a game at like 120 frames per second or something like that. So I kind of don't think anti-lag is really anything for the Steam Deck. But the native anti-aliasing quality mode that AMD announced at Gamescom, I do think is pretty cool, and I think will be really beneficial to people. So they said we're excited to introduce native anti-aliasing to FSR3, which we know both devs and gamers have been asking for. Unlike our other modes, gamers can use FSR3 without applying any upscaling, but they'll still get the high quality anti-aliasing and sharpening from FSR. There is modest performance cost when using this new mode. Native anti-aliasing can also be combined with FSR3 frame generation, providing a substantial performance boost. So this would mean that games can run natively at 800p on the deck, and you still get FSR's anti-aliasing. You wouldn't need to use a games like TAA, for example, or MSAA.
Okay.
And it wouldn't need to reconstruct from a lower resolution, which is how FSR works at the moment. So if you want to get to 800p, FSR will actually render at, say, 700p and then upscale using its upscale technology. You now no longer need to do that. You can run it at the native resolution, which is really cool.
That is really cool. And like it being a, like you said, like a modest trade-off in that way, like feels like a really good compromise and like a great way to be able to, eke out a little bit more power without, having that major sacrifice to the battery life, which is always, a tough dance with the Steam Deck, right? Like that's I think you're often more limited by its battery life than its power, right? It can output a lot of games at higher quality than you'd want to play them just because you're going to be stuck to a wall.
Which, to be honest, that is how I play my Steam Deck most of the time. I'm at home, so I could plug in at any time, and I'm usually
Yeah.
playing in bursts. I'm usually playing at like an hour at a time. But this weekend, I was playing it in a car on the way back from my parents, and I could only play for a limited period of time because of that same thing. And then so I was just like, well, and I'm gonna need to charge the car at some point, so I'm gonna want to wait and like reserve this. So I just like stopped myself from playing it, which was a real shame. It would have been great
Yeah.
to just carry on. And I guess I could have brought a charger for the car, but I don't know how slow that would have been charging in the car on like out of a cigarette lighter socket thing. It would have
It
taken a
probably
long
would have
time.
been like okay if you had it plugged in before you were like low on power already, Like you do this slow charging thing and it's just like,
Yeah, or if I got one of those battery packs, this like really beefy battery packs,
yeah.
that might have done the job. But
I
and it
decided
was
I'm
just so cool to be able to play it anyway, like, just
yeah.
being able to play in a car, like, that kind of experience, and I'd limited it to 10 watts in the quick access menu, so I limited the TDP to 10 watts, so it was running slightly worse than I was used to because I was just like, "Oh, I don't wanna use all my battery up."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and like I know I talked about that when I went on vacation earlier this year and like it died like halfway through my flight, kind of thing. Um so yeah, I definitely kind of want to invest in one of those as well, and if you get like a high enough capacity one, then it's kind of like, all right, well then that definitely changes the game quite a bit as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, after the break, we'll talk about, another handheld that has, like, an absolute mega battery on it. Um, but I really wish the Steam Deck would get a bigger battery, or at least I'd love like some aftermarket replacements. We keep seeing all these aftermarket replacements for things like
Yeah.
screens. Like a beefier battery that I can slot in there would be so nice.
I would that's an upgrade I would shell out for and do immediately. If it was like double battery life or like even, a man can dream, right? Like if it was like quadruple battery life where it's like 12 hours, like okay, all right, like I'd shell out for that in a second.
What price would you pay for that? Like I think I would go anywhere up to £100
That was
for a
exactly
bigger
where my
battery.
mind went, was up to $100, depending on how much it
Yeah.
expands. I think if it was double, I would be less inclined, right?
Maybe go 125?
Again, I think it depends on how like, if they came to me and were like 12 hours, it's gonna be 4 times as much capacity, I would do that. 120 easy. Be like, "Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem," right? Because it's
I
like,
don't know if it can physically fit like a
probably not,
battery that's that big that
no.
can do 12 hours in the space.
But, I mean, right, like I said, y dream on, right? Like, that would be insane. That would be very cool. Higher capacity batteries in handhelds are, like, my number 1 gripe with like how good modern handhelds are in terms of power, right? Because like you think about, you know, back in the day, right? Like most handhelds, like the PlayStation Vita, that thing you charge it, it's charged for like 3 weeks. Like it's like the Switch Pro controller level of like, why is this battery capacity so insanely high? And like if we could get even a fraction of that for the Switches and Steam Decks and uh ROG allies and all that of the worlds, like that would be really cool. I think um even 5 hours feels so much better than three, you know?
Yeah, and obviously it depends what games you're playing. I think I got like 5 or 6 hours out when I was playing Vampire Survivors, but that's not exactly
Easy.
taxing on the console.
Right, right. And like I think the cool thing about the Steam Deck in particular is that it can play these more powerful games and that you're like, holy moly, I can't believe I can play, Elden Ring on the go, right? I can't believe I can play Red Dead Redemption on the go, right? Or two. Um, and like if you're playing those kinds of games, you want to play them for chunks, right? Like you want to be able to get in there and get your feet wet. And it's definitely a bummer to, you know, have that odd scenario come up where it does actually impact you. Cause I'm with you. Where like more often than not, I'm playing at home or I'm playing somewhere with where I can plug in and it's like whatever. Um, but when I did have that scenario where I'm like, oh God, I'm really enjoying playing Persona 5 on this thing on the go. And then it's like, okay, but it's dead and you got 2/3 of your flight left. It's like, oh no, dang. Like that that does sting a little bit, compared to what you're used to with, even the Switch, right? Where like, you're getting a solid 3 hours out of Tears of the Kingdom, you know? That makes a difference. It does.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously they had a revision that changed the battery,
It'll
made the
happen.
battery life last longer. I'm sure we'll get one with the Steam Deck, but man, an aftermarket battery replacement seems like a no-brainer. I really think you could fit a larger battery than I think it's a 40 watt hour battery in there. I really think you could probably get a 50 watt hour, 55 watt hour battery in there in the same space. So I think I'd be willing to shell out for that too.
Would be nice. Would be nice. Definitely that would definitely be the number one thing I would change if I could. If I had one thing to upgrade on the device, it would be give me the fattest battery you can get in this thing. And let's do
Mhm.
something here. So we are going to talk about another handheld PC entering the market that touts a pretty hefty battery life, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But before that, let me remind you that this episode of the Steam Deck Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of August. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Asobi, Snackago, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all the real to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Speaking of which, if you want to hear a little extra handheld gaming talk this week. You might want to go check out this week's episode of our sister show, the Flip Screen Games podcast, where we had friend of the show, Chris Brandrick, who works over at Overkill, which is an outlet that covers the Steam Deck as well as a bunch of other cool handheld devices. And also Switch Weekly, the Nintendo Switch newsletter. And he's been on our other show, Nintendo Noise, a couple times to talk about some of his work over there. And the three of us talked all about PlayStation Portal, the device formerly known as the Project Q, which we've talked about over here a couple times, and kind of how it, stacks up against some of these other competitors in the handheld space these days, and what it can do to potentially find a market for itself. So if you want to hear more of that conversation that I know we had a couple times over here, definitely make sure you go check out that episode because it was a good listen.
Yeah, Chris also showed us like AYANEO at the end, like briefly. So I'm interested to have him back on at some point to
Yeah.
talk about that device and how he feels about it.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to get him and Kevin on one of these days to chat about all the different competitors in the space.
Hmm. Yeah, Kevin's a an ROG Ally guy at the moment, apparently.
I like the flow of that ROG Ally guy. Is that taken? You should
Yeah, honestly, we should quick. Let's get into domain name.
lock it. Let's lock it down. Let's lock it down, everybody. All right, so yeah, if you want to go check that out and much more, including our Discord, where you can keep the conversation rolling, our Patreon, where you can help us keep these mics and lights hot. Excuse me. You can head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find links to all that and much, much more. However you choose to get involved, we thank you for tuning into another episode of the show. All right, Steve. So the AYANEO Kun, which is an adorable name.
I think so. I watched Taki Udon's video, and I think he pronounced it Chen or Chin, something
isn't it
like that,
isn't
which
it
is like the
KUN?
Chinese pronunciation of it.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's like named after a Chinese fish, apparently.
Okay,
So
cool.
it's named after a big fish. Very weird.
Love big fish.
Yeah,
Any
and this is a big fish. It's got an 8.4-inch screen,
huge.
54-watt TDP, 54-watt. So the Steam Deck has a maximum TDP watt of 15,
Holy
and this goes up to
moly.
54.
Holy moly. What? That's crazy. That's so crazy. Oh my god.
Uh,
So
yeah,
what does that
and
mean?
it can do
What does
that
that
because it's
translate to?
got a I mean, it will seemingly translate to much better performance, but also the chip is it's like a laptop chip, like a gaming laptop chip that they've put in this thing.
Mhm.
You'll be able to play really beefy games on this. I recommend watching Taki Udon's video. He had early access to this. He works with AYANEO. He had a couple of them that he showed off. So he's been playing like a bunch of games. You can see the new Space where they've ripped off the Steam Deck quick access menu. It looks identical to the Steam Deck's quick access menu, some of the new software that they've got.
Hey,
But
you know?
it's able to achieve this because it's got a 75 watt hour battery in comparison to the Steam Deck's 40 watt hour battery. If you were running the Steam Deck at a 54 watt TDP, it would run out of battery in like a second. Like it just would not, you'd be getting nothing out of it. You'd be
That's
running it for
wild.
like 5 minutes and then it would be done. There's this is a big device, but it's not much bigger than a Steam Deck, and I think that's what's really really cool about it.
The
And it's the first time
8.4
we've
inch
seen
screen is nuts. That's a huge screen.
yeah, and 1600p as well. So it's like a high resolution, high quality screen. It uses the P3 wide color gamut, like color range, color space instead of sRGB. So it can show a lot more colors on the screen as well. It looks like a really really nice device, and if I had a lot of money to waste, I would probably pick one up. But unfortunately, I do not. So I will not be picking one up. But I wish I did because this is the first device we've seen that has the same inputs as the Steam Deck. It's got the trackpads, it's got the D-pad, the back buttons, the shoulder buttons, everything that you've come to expect from the Steam Deck is there. The buttons seemingly are the same as the Steam Deck's buttons. They feel really nice. From what I saw on Taki Udon's review. Um, but this is an expensive device. This starts with the early bird price at $999, and when it retails, the base price will be 1,209, and it's going to go all the way up to $1,949, which is going to
Whoa,
be the
what?
top end model.
Whoa!
Yeah, it's an
I thought the
expensive
base
device.
one was
Well, it
expensive. You're
two
telling
thousand
me the
dollars.
top one is 2 grand? Holy, that's insane.
Yeah, that is 64 gigabytes of RAM, whereas the Steam Deck has 16, and 4 terabytes of as internal storage on the SSD.
God, this thing is a beast. Damn, dude.
Yeah, I really like it. It's like
I
they were
want
like,
one.
we want to make a supercar version of the Steam Deck. We want to make the best thing we can because
Yeah.
they checked everything in here. There's even a 4G SIM slot, so you can put SIM card in there and you can be connected wherever you are. You can
You know all these
stream
different
games to
colors
it. You can
too.
do whatever you want.
All these colors. Sorry, I got the video playing for the folks and I got distracted. These color schemes are awesome. Sorry. Finish your thought. I didn't mean to talk over you there.
I just think it's so cool. I just think this device is really, really nice, and I would love to get my hands on one at some point. Of
Yeah.
course, it's running Windows 11 with iOS 2, but man, does it look nice.
Steve, I think we gotta do a fundraiser. We gotta do a fundraiser and try to get you one of these things.
Yeah, let's raise $4,000 to buy some AYANEO KUNs.
I feel like we can figure it out. I think we gotta try. We gotta do like we'll do like a 48-hour stream or something.
What color scheme would you go for? So there's the 3 color schemes. We've got black feather, which is basically all black, white
Yeah.
silk, which is white, and it
With
looks like it's got like blue,
yeah.
the blue on the top, right?
I like
And
that
then
one.
there's the silver wing, which has like all silver.
It's like chrome, yeah. It kinda looks like the silver SP a little bit.
Mm.
I like the white and blue one a lot. I think I'd go with that one. Maybe the black, but
I
white?
like that one too, but I think I'd probably go black feather. I just like black. It's nice.
Yeah, me too. But I don't there's something about white technology that just feels so, like, futuristic. I'm always a sucker for that. I loved that about the OLED Switch. I'm like, "Ooh, the white Joy-Cons, that's kinda cool?"
Yeah, I think
But I
white
also
is
like
really
the
having a moment,
PS5,
isn't it?
which is hideous by all accounts, but I think it's cool that it looks like an insane obelisk? Like, so I like that aesthetic. This thing is
Yeah,
nuts though, dude.
we had a question about this from. Yeah, I think it looks really cool. We had a question about it from Snacky Go, one of our Patreon producers over on the Discord. And he said, I think I saw INEO announce or release a new device. I think the price was rumored to be $999, which is the early bird price, by the way. You will never get one for that price. It will be at least $1,129 if you come to buy one of these. Um, it looks like AYANEO is taking this race for the PC handheld thing seriously, but can they provide any real threat to the Steam Deck?
I don't I don't know. Um, I think this is an interesting tact though, because I think the thing that has always I don't know. I think one of the things that you and I always come back to whenever we talk about these competitors is this is not enough of a jump in quality to justify not being a part of the Steam ecosystem, right? It's like the Steam Deck itself is a great device, but a big part of why it's so great is the support that Valve offers for it, right? Is that they're constantly updating it, that they're constantly bringing in these, popular fan features and making them native, and like the way that they're evolving the Steam OS, like it's it's so much more about the ecosystem than just the hardware, right? All these other devices have this like kind of like air about them where it's like, okay, but like are these companies serious about this? Are they trying to just throw their hat in the ring and see if it sticks? Like is this a thing that they're gonna continue to support, right? We talked about I can't remember the name of it, but it was the device we talked about like a week or two ago, the one that's like got the Switch Joy-Cons.
Oh, the no, not Logitech, the Lenovo Legion Go, right?
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. Lenovo Legion Go. And one of the things that you brought up was like, well, what happens if you get, if one of these Joy Cons stops working, right, in a couple of years, something like that. Like, what's the support on that going to look like, right? We talked about the screen last week, and it's like, oh, like this update's cool or whatever, but like having to rely on this non-proprietary, like it's as soon as you have one of these devices where a million little things can go wrong, and it's like, are there gonna be support for it, or is it gonna be too niche that you're kind of just stuck? And I think with all of that in mind, all these other competitors have been like, yeah, like that's cool. It has this cool idea or this cool advantage or whatever, but I can't see why you'd pick it over a Steam Deck. I can't see why you'd pick it over a Steam Deck. This is the first device where I look at it and I'm like, I can understand why you would pick this over a Steam Deck because it
Yeah.
absolutely dwarfs it in terms of power, right? Like this is a legit upgrade alternative. And I don't know if there's a market for that enough to support it, and you might run into the same problem long term, but I think it's super bold for your idea to be like, how do we compete with the Steam Deck, to be like, we're going to make, if that's the, like you said, right? If that's the budget four-door sedan, this is the sports car. This is the high end, like if you don't got 2 grand for it, then, this ain't for you, right? And it's like, okay, like that does speak to someone, right? Like I think there is a type of user of, for PC, a power user that is like, yeah, like I want to buy a super high-end souped up device that has all these hot bells and whistles and like is that really, really impressive piece of tech. I think that there's a market for that a lot more than, okay, this is a Steam Deck, but it runs Windows.
It run Windows, yeah. I think this is like, we wanna make the very best money, no object, we're not doing this to a price, whereas the Steam Deck is, we know we've gotta hit a certain price point, and they worked really hard to hit that base $400 price point, and they made compromises where they needed to in order to get there. The $400 model runs at it's only got 64 gigs of slow storage. It's obviously not as a powerful device. It doesn't run at 54 watts TDP, that's for sure. We spoke briefly about how the battery life, we wish the battery life was better. All of those things is like Ioneer were just like, okay, these are all the complaints that people have got. Let's just address them all. Who cares how much it costs? If it costs 2 grand, it costs 2 grand. And that's what they did. And I think it's great. And I would really, really love one. It seems like an aspirational product. I just hope that Ioneer supports it going forwards, because they are known to keep introducing new handhelds. Like, we just keep getting new ones, and I really just want them to have one, stick around for a while, and then be like, this is the flagship device, and we're just going to keep updating the flagship device, and we're just going to keep making sure that we keep supporting this. And I get that their business is very different to Steam's.
Yeah,
Valve has Steam, they can subsidize the product. Ioneer has to keep innovating, they have to keep releasing new products, because they're making all of their money on the product itself. They're not making money off of the games in the same way that Valve is. And so
sure.
these devices are always going to be more expensive.
Yeah,
But I
but
think
like,
this one justifiably so. It is more expensive because of all of the tech that's in there.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, like, even like you have a little table that I pulled out for folks here on YouTube that like shows the price breakdown, right? And there's like that base unit, the early bird one that you're talking about, which is like a 16 gig 512. All the other ones are like, like you said, the top one is 64 gigs, but like they all have 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, 4 terabytes. Like that's a ton of, like you can see where the money went, right? And like I think when you contextualize it in all these parts, if you put all these parts in a PC, I don't think it would be like, I think the price parity is pretty close, like it's not that crazy when you think about what it offers. Whereas, to your point, I think the point of the Steam Deck is to be an affordable, like entry level product, right? That like anybody can get into and start buying into the Steam ecosystem, right? Whereas to your point with this, like the whole point of it is having to attract people with the hardware. And like I'm with you on that in terms of like I get that they need to keep iterating. I think it would be cool if they kind of just like developed a couple like sub brands though, where like that the Kun is like
It's the
or however
premium one, yeah.
that's the premium one, right? And then like there, you have another thing here where like they're going to be releasing the Pocket Air Ultra on September 6th, which is like their little like they have like a tiny line where it's like that are more, they're pocket sized, right? Like they're very thin, they're very light, they're not as powerful, they're more affordable. Like that is definitely a different distinct product that I think speaks to a different, audience and a different market. And like that's great. Like I like that idea. I like the idea of them having um a bunch of different products that meet the needs of the different gamers that are out there looking for these devices. That's great. But like do you need to constantly be chasing like the next thing rather than like, adopting a couple form factors and then iterating, right? And like you said, the Kun is the high end one, the Pocket is the mini one, and then maybe you do have like, the more budget option that is kind of just like, yeah, it's a Steam Deck but it runs Windows. Like fine, that's cool. Like that works for somebody, you know?
Yeah, I kinda think that's what they're gonna be doing. So they've got the Air line, we've had the Air and the Air 2. They've got the baseline, they
Right.
used to
That
just
was
have
the
the
other one.
AYANEO, and they did the AYANEO 2. Now it seems to be like there's the AYANEO Kun, there's the AYANEO Air and AYANEO Air. We've also seen the Slide get announced. We had a question from Green Beanie who wrote in and said, "Is there any news on the AYANEO Slide or how that's gonna make things different with the keyboard built in? It looks like done right, it could be a new thing. It reminds me of those old flip phones with the keyboard, but with a controller. I never used one of those, but anyone who has, please tell me how it is." I really you know what? Like, I feel so old reading this question because I did use one of those phones with keys. They work great, the Ioneer Slide P, we spoke about it a few months back. It's like the T-Mobile, what's it called? What was it called? The
The
hip top?
N-Gage. Oh no, that
No,
was Nokia.
yeah, it was the hip top, the one there with the swivel screen. I can't remember what they called
Yeah,
it.
I can't remember.
Um, I'm gonna have to find out. Hold on. T-Mobile hip top. I can't remember what they actually called the thing. Sidekick, the T-Mobile Sidekick, also known as the Danger Hip Top. So this thing has a keyboard underneath the screen. You slide the screen up, it sort of like tilts back, and you can use this thing with a keyboard if you want to. So it's another potential form factor, and it seems to use all the same tech as the AYANEO Air in there otherwise, but it has like the keyboard built in, and I know a bunch of people will want that. They'll want to play like something, say for example, like an MMO. You're playing World of Warcraft or whatever, and you want to type to people, you'll be able to do that in there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, man, it's cool. Like I really like the idea of the Pocket Air specifically too. Like I think like the size of that is definitely attractive. I know like as much as I really like these bigger devices,
Well, the
like
Pocket Air is a very different device. The Pocket Air is their
oh, that
first
doesn't have that
Android
same okay,
device.
okay. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's like a move into a different space for them. So they're looking at
Okay.
those,
Okay.
the little Android emulation handhelds, and they're trying to do a premium one of them, which I think makes a lot of sense because I think there is a market for that of these kind of nice devices, but a premium one of them that you can emulate things on, that you can maybe stream games on. Has a 5.5-inch OLED screen on there. It is light, only 380 grams, 17 millimeters thick. Has a 4G SIM slot in there, so you can kind of have it connected whenever you want. Hall sensing joysticks, all that kind of stuff. Starts at 279, so it's like hitting that low end price point. Maxes out at $519 when it goes to retail, or 399 for the early bird. And that's with 12 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage. I could see someone picking this up, playing something like Genshin Impact on it, using it as like a Genshin Impact device, but then also, emulating the GameCube on there with Dolphin.
It's like it's a
And
perfect emulation machine. I think like if you are the type of person that like wants to get a Steam Deck or something like that specifically for emulation, I could see this being an ideal scenario, right? Because it's quite a bit cheaper. Like if you do get like that base model at the entry level price of like 279, that's really attractive. And if all you were going to use your Steam Deck for anyway was like, I just want to play like Game Boy games on it. I just want to play, old retro stuff on a nice dedicated device. I think this is like perfect for that.
Yeah, it's really nice. I really like the look of it. The retro edition is color schemed like an original Famicom.
I
So
know,
you've got
it's
that
so
like
nice.
that red color. It's really
I
nice. They did one
I
of these
don't
for the like AYANEO Geek back in the day.
this is the exact type of shit that always gets me. I'm like, "I don't need this thing at all, but I think I would like it."
Honestly, I think this would be like a perfect device for you. You know, it's OLED, you just have it by your bed. You just like, I want to finish the night. I'm going to play some Pokemon or something. And it's just a nice
Yeah.
way to play those games that you already want to play. And you
And
just pick it up at any time.
it's so portable. You know, like, at this size, like, what's the dimensions on it?
It's
It's 7
5.5-inch screen, 17
yeah.
mils thick. I don't
It
know width wise, but it's probably the same size as like a Switch Lite, maybe a bit smaller.
yeah, like, it looks like it's around that size or smaller, and, like, that is really nice. Like, that's a nice form factor, you know? That's a nice device to, it's a lot easier to grab that and toss that in a bag than a Steam Deck, you know?
Oh yeah, 100%. And you know, it's gonna last longer. The battery life's gonna be longer on it. You know, it's basically a phone that you can just play games on. I think it's a really cool device. I hope they have some success with it. I'd like to see someone come into that space with a premium product. It seems like there's so many of those cheap Android based emulation machines that just come packed full of ROMs out the gate, and you kind of have to hack it to get it to work really well or install a different operating system on there. It'd be nice to have something that maybe competes with the Retroid, like the Retroid Pocket, and we kind of get a different competitor, different take on it. And I think AYANEO could probably do a good job with it. But the Kun, I think, my God, I would love one, and that could become your main machine. It's got USB 4 on there, so you could plug in a external GPU and just use this as an absolute beast if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, like, you could literally set up a dock for it and then, like, have, like, screens connected at a desk and just, like, pop it in, and it would work just as well as a proper gaming laptop.
Yeah. But it's got that handheld form factor when you wanna take it away and you wanna play games instead. I
Yeah.
think for me, this is probably gonna become a really big segment. Like, this combined with a dock, maybe with an eGPU and a screen, I could see a lot of people wanting to get in on that. If they can make the docked experience work well, and I think that's where the Steam Deck's really lacking at the moment, I think it's a real missed trick.
The nice thing about this thing, though, is I think the reason that the docked experience will be better is because, like, the power is so much higher and the battery life is so much higher that, like, you're not gonna be worried about, like, "Oh, I need a different setup
Yeah, I mean, you
for."
won't even need to worry about the battery life when you're plugged in, right? You can just
Yeah.
whack it all the way up to
No,
54 watts.
for sure, but, like, my point is that, like, I think that it has such a strong baseline, like, the expectation is that you're gonna target high end, so, like, I don't think it would be as much switching, right? Like, the idea that you could be like, "Yeah, like, the base I have on this is locked at, 1,600, whatever," right? And then you're
Yeah, like, even if you ran it at 1080p, you know, it's not maxing
yeah,
out the
like
1600p screen, but when you plug it into your TV, it's still gonna look really good.
yeah, exactly. Like, it would be a much more seamless experience to go from handheld to screen than it is on Steam Deck right now. Which I think would be a really cool, advantage for it, you know? And again, right, like, to take it back to Snacky Go's question, right, like, can they provide any real threat? I don't know, right? I think this
No.
thing is so expensive that I don't see it having,
It's
uh
it's it's in a different category, right? It's for the
yeah,
enthusiast
exactly.
who's really excited about it. It's not trying to dominate the mainstream. And at the end of the day, does it really matter where you buy your games from? You're
Yeah,
getting
on
them from
Steam either
Steam.
way. Yeah, they don't care. I think that's one of the really truly brilliant things about the Steam Deck is them coming out and like putting their weight behind it and proving that this is a viable product. As like now you have all these other companies like rushing to try to get in on this market that Steam developed and then cornered, and it's like unless they buy one of these devices and buy all their games on the Windows Store, right, or something like that, they're gonna be
Real
launching
Epic
Steam.
Games stands. That's what Zayd is, right? He's a real Epic Games stan.
Oh my god, don't say that. He's gonna lose his mind. Um, so yeah, I mean, like, yes, ultimately, I think no matter what, the success of these devices benefits Steam, so it doesn't really matter. So it's not like a threat as much as it is just like an expansion of the market in a way that I think is like pretty much only positive for the folks that are interested in them because at the end of the day, like the more folks who are, buying into these things and showing that there's interest in them, there's only going to be more support generated.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the stuff that AYANEO are doing and also the stuff that GPD is doing, like the new GPD Win Max, is really interesting. It's really cool. The different form factors, or they're just taking the performance just to new heights, and it's nice to see. And it makes me excited for what we're gonna get next from Valve. I think we will get a Steam Deck 2 at some point. It seems like a surefire thing at this point that they've they've had such success with this, better than any piece of hardware they've ever put out before. You can kind of bet that we're going to get a revision.
Definitely. Yeah. I'd bet money on it. They've already talked about it, right? They're already thinking about it.
Yeah,
I think they've shown that the handheld PC market is here to stay, and I think it's only going to grow as more people, find ways to innovate and like create competition, right? Because so they always say, right? Like competition breeds excellence, right? Like if there are viable competitors out here doing things that the Steam Deck can't do, that lead people like us who are enthusiasts of the Steam Deck to be like turning our heads, being like, "Whoa, that is cool. I would like one of those." Like, hopefully that inspires them to continue to improve the experience that we're already enjoying.
yeah, 100%. And like it's so nice to see this category just booming. I love the form factor. I love my Steam Deck. I love the device, and um, if we can just kind of keep getting more competition in the market, I think it just will only make things better for everyone.
Agreed. So we'll leave it there for today. Let us know what you think of Ioneo's latest swing. Is this something that you want? Do you want a premium handheld PC like this? Or, are you of the mindset that the premium PC experience that you have is your desktop at home, right? And like you want the Steam Deck to be more of a companion piece than, a replacement for your rig. I'm interested to hear what folks in the community think because I know that we all use our Steam Decks in such different ways. And I think I could see this appealing to different segments of the audience in different ways. So I'm very interested to hear what people think about this device and whether or not it's something that they're even remotely considering or if it is like such a pipe dream just because of the cost of it.
Well, that or the Pocket Air, right? Do you use it mainly for emulation? If so, would you want something smaller, lighter, easier to carry around that's cheaper?
I I know a few of my friends that bought Steam Decks that I think would like that device and maybe would have bought that instead had it been available at the time.
Hmm.
So I wonder. But anyway, food for thought. Make sure you write in for us for next week. Remember, flipscreen.games. That's the website where you can find our Discord. You can find our email address. You can find our sister shows. You can find our Patreon if you want to go and get the show early, show your support, all that good stuff. It's all over there. Flipscreen.games. Head over to the website and click on some stuff. It helps us out a lot, and it won't cost you a pretty penny unless you want to go to Patreon and go above and beyond to show your support. Help us keep these mics and lights hot and get a couple good perks and goodies for your trouble. However, you choose to get involved or show your support, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Steam Deck Podcast. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.